Zalete, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. For decades, the global narrative around African sovereignty has been carefully managed, sanitized, and dedicated by external interests. But every now and then, a crack appears and the raw and filtered truth slips through. That is exactly what happened when Dr. Nkosana Dlamini Zuma, the former chairperson of African Union Commission, delivered a blistering assessment of the continent's current political and economic reality. This wasn't just a typical bureaucratic address. This was a systematic takedown of modern neo-colonial dependency, a sharp critique of the internal political failures, and a validation of the new revolutionary wave sweeping across the Sahel. When a figure of this diplomatic stature openly validates the progressive revolution in Burkina Faso under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the geopolitical landscape shifts. For years, Western mainstream media has framed the events in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso through a singular negative lens, labeling them straightly as unstable military regimes. But Zuma completely subverted the narrative. She exposed the hypocrisy of the ballot box by pointing out a harsh truth. Elected leaders across Africa consistently fail to protect their people, while the unelected leadership in the Sahel is actually delivering on the promises of true liberation.
But we can also see some light in the continent. Maybe, should I be controversial? Yes. Okay. I'll be controversial. I've been to Burkina twice recently. Why? Because I can see a revolution there, a progressive revolution. Yes, some people ask me, how do you go there? There was a coup there. How do you visit a country where there was a coup? I said, on the day of the coup, I was not there. I was here. That young man removed another soldier. Didn't kill anyone. But I went there because I can see there is a revolution. They are building that country. They are doing what Sankara had pronounced and was wanting to do before he was assassinated. So you can see they've taken charge of their resources. They know how much gold now that they are mining they didn't know before. They are building their own roads. He's asked his engineers and giving them equipment. They are building the roads instead of waiting for companies from outside that are going to charge a lot of money. So he has given peasants equipment to farm so that they are self-sufficient in terms of food and so on. So, yes, he wasn't elected, but he's doing what elected people should be doing. That's my view. You can disagree with it. You can disagree with it, but that's my view. And our continent has enough resources to build the Africa we want. But we must take charge of them. How many countries in our continent know exactly how many tons of gold or whatever is lifted every day? How many? Even governments. They get told by the people who are lifting. How do we know when you say they've lifted 3, how do we know they didn't lift 5? We must take charge and ensure that we know what is happening, we know what's happening about our resources. And we must use our land. 60% of available arable land globally is on this continent. But this continent is importing food. We have water, we have sunshine, we have land, we have people. Why are we not growing our food? So we need leadership that's going to ensure we do the right things. We need to grow our food. This last year, probably we spent close to $100 billion importing food, dollars, as a continent, which we could have used to develop the continent. And growing our food would have also reduced the unemployment that is bothering us. So let us together do what we need to do and not wait for others. If they come, they are welcome. I'll give the last example before I sit down. So, the question before us is not whether the National Democratic Revolution remains relevant, but it is that the condition that gave rise to it still confront us every day. Inequality, unemployment, poverty, underdevelopment, and the unfinished struggle for economic emancipation persist. The real question is whether this generation has the courage, the vision, and the discipline to complete what the NDR needs to complete. That's what we must debate. Because history will not judge us by the speeches we make, the resolutions we adopt, and the debates we hold. It will judge us by whether we transformed political freedom into economic justice, whether we turned pan-Africanism from an aspiration into a lived reality, and whether we left future generations a continent that is better, that is more united, peaceful, prosperous, and more sovereign than the one we inherited. The task before us is therefore clear: to complete the NDR, to advance pan-Africanism, realize Agenda 2063, and build the Africa that Nkrumah imagined, that President Tambo fought for, that President Mandela sacrificed for, and that our children deserve. The future is not something that will happen to us. It is something we must build ourselves. And the time to build it is now. Africa. Thank you. Those who are listening to the podcast, we gather here today at the end of the Youth Month, in which we commemorate 50 years of the 1976 uprising. As we reflect on our history and on our struggle, we note also the years of the Freedom Charter at Cape Town, but also the years which was the year of the Morogoro Conference, which was a watershed conference for the ANC. And also this year we mark 30 years of our Constitution. So it's a very reflective year. But let me start by just identifying ourselves. Who are we? The universe, or God, depending on how you look at it, created Africa. We, South Africans, Ghanaians, whatever, were created by the conference in Berlin. Yes. So, it means we're Africans. Because these different nationalities were not created by us or the universe. They were created by our colonizers. So, But because we are talking about the NDR, we cannot talk about the ANC. The ANC, at its very formation, recognized that we are Africans. That's why it's called the African National Congress. And that's why the anthem was Nkosi Sikeleli Africa. And that's why it was Mayibuye Africa. But also, when we adopted our constitution 30 years ago, somebody I will not name made the main speech in that parliament. And he was talking about the South African constitution. But he said, I'm an African. He didn't say I'm a South African. He said, I'm an African. And he made his speech, and we gave him a standing ovation, which means we agreed with him that we were Africans. And there is also something very good that the continent has agreed on, the Pan-African payment and settlement system. That system allows you to buy anything from the continent using rands. You don't have to go through a third currency. And where you buy from, they receive the money in their currency. If you buy from Nigeria, making an example, you pay in rands, they receive the money in nairas. That's the Pan-African payment system. And also that way, you save money, because each time you use a third currency, you have to pay commission. I don't know how many countries have joined. Last time I checked, I think it was 17 or 18. But South Africa is not yet joined. I'm sure if we did, it will help our trade, it will help our economy. So the instruments are there, but we are not utilizing those instruments. But let me say that the complaints in the country about unemployment, yes, there's unemployment, it's true. There's poverty, it's true. But do we believe that if tomorrow all the Africans left, there will be zero unemployment in this country and there will be zero poverty? The challenge is our economy. Yes, the grievances are correct, but I think we're barking on the wrong tree. There'll still be unemployment. There'll still be poverty. So let's fix our own house. Let's fix our economy. Let's not do what Frantz Fanon said, and I quote him, "The oppressed will always believe the worst about themselves and seek scapegoats among those closest to them." So let's not do what he said. Let's analyze the problems properly and let's find solutions properly. And as he said, we must hide nothing from the masses of our people. We must tell no lies. We must mask no difficulties. We must talk about the difficulties we are facing. We must talk about our failures and claim no easy victories. So our prosperity depends not only on us, but on the continent as well. That's why Agenda 2063 says we want a continent that's integrated, that is peaceful, and that is prosperous. and that we can build together. And Agenda 2063 does explain how we can do that. Also, ensuring that women and youth are part of that development. When we say women and youth, we're not excluding men, but men have brought us to where we are. We are saying we must bring youth and women to the equation and work together with men as well. So I think we must bring the NDR to where it should be. It's not, we haven't reached the destination, but are we on the right trajectory? I think that's what we must be discussing today. Are we on the right trajectory? And I would want to say, let's bring the NDR to the right trajectory. We must have also rigorous leadership, ideological cohesion, and commitment to international solidarity. And of course, above all, we require an unwavering belief in our capacity to govern and to chart our destiny.
The analysis here is clear. Burkina Faso is becoming the modern blueprint for domestic resource control. For the first time in its history, the state actually tracks its daily gold extraction instead of blindly trusting foreign multinational reports. Infrastructure is no longer outsourced to exploitative Western corporations. Local engineers are being equipped to build their own roads. This is the practical execution of Thomas Sankare's vision, proving that sovereignty isn't a theoretical concept discussed in corporate boardrooms. It is a logistical reality built on the ground. But the critique doesn't stop with external exploitation. The script takes a dark, necessary turn into internal political failures. The continent is standing on a massive paradox, holding 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, yet spending a staggering $100 billion annually to import food. This isn't a resource deficit. It is a profound leadership failure. It is a result of a political course that has evolved into a network of tenderpreneurs, corrupt middlemen who prefer to take a 10% commission on foreign import contracts rather than investing in domestic production and industrialization. This economic failure directly fuels the dangerous rise of populist xenophobia, particularly in nations like South Africa, where citizens are crushed by poverty and unemployment. The political elites conveniently point fingers at fellow Africans, but this analysis strips away that scapegoat. For all this while, anytime we see an African leader rising, they write narratives to suit them. They always try to make sure they paint that leader bad. We've seen reports about Sahel and even what is currently going on in Mali. How people were trying to write the narrative, making it look like this place is unsafe, the TT have taken over, they have done this, and they always use their platforms to promote what the TT are doing and not the strength of the Malian people. And these are the same people who are claiming to the world how they want to help the African progress. And like she said, leadership failure. Our leaders will not be bold enough to look us, to protect us, to do things that will give the power back to us. So, like she has rightfully said, leadership failure is what is happening in Africa, whereby the citizens are also programmed in a way for us to believe that when things are not happening the way we want as citizens, we tend to buy into the narrative that it is our brothers and sisters coming from other places that are responsible. So we tend to be blaming each other, leaving the real culprit. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger brought us a revolution, and we are seeing the revolution that we have never seen. We read about these things in books about Nkrumah, about Sankara, but in our lifetime, we are seeing what true liberation is. Leaders doing everything possible to give the power back to the African, because for all these years, we are told narratives about us that are not true. So for today, the African believes how weak he or she is and not seeing the power that we have in us. And that is why always when you see Captain Ibrahim Traoré talking, he talks by giving back the power to us. So the time for the unification of Africa, for us to believe in our own narrative, for us to support our own selves is now. If we continue to buy into the narratives of other people, they will continue to tell the story to please them and not you. And at the end of the day, who is the one that is suffering? It is you. And with the leadership, we all need to push so we get the leaders like the ones we have in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to take over the whole of the continent. Until then, it will be very difficult. We keep talking because, like she said, being a good leader is not in the boardroom. It's not about the speeches we hear in Addis Ababa. It is not about the speeches they give us in SADC, in African Union, in ECOWAS. Like, it is a completely different thing. We have heard speech and heard speech, but we are seeing the speeches are not changing. The speeches are not changing. And democracy is not what changes anything. So we just need to have good leadership in Africa that will take responsibility to change the continent for us. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world in Africa, West Africa, and in South Africa.